Everyone thinks Netflix won because of streaming. But that's not even close to the real story. The actual reason Netflix dominates is hidden inside one business decision that most people have never heard of. And once you understand it, you'll see why Blockbuster never stood a chance. Let's rewind to 1997. Blockbuster was a giant. Over 9,000 stores. They owned the entire video rental market. Revenue was in the billions. But then Netflix launched with a simple idea. Rent DVDs online, no late fees, no stores. Blockbuster executives didn't panic. They had 9,000 physical locations. Netflix was just a mail-based startup. On paper, Netflix looked like a minor threat. But Netflix made one strategic decision that Blockbuster could never copy. And that decision changed everything. Netflix decided to engineer their entire business around data. Not just collect data, but build every single decision around predictive analytics. Which movies to stock, how to price subscriptions, how to recommend content. Everything came down to understanding customer behavior. Blockbuster operated on gut feel and traditional retail logic. Buy popular movies. Stock more copies of blockbusters. Charge late fees. That's how retail worked. Netflix asked a different question. What if we could predict exactly what each customer wants to watch before they even know they want it? What if we could use data to understand that customer A in California would enjoy an indie film, while customer B in Texas would prefer action movies? This was revolutionary thinking in the late 1990s. Here's the key difference in their business models. Blockbuster, people come to stores. Browse. Rent on impulse. Make money per transaction. Late fees are bonus revenue. Netflix, flat monthly subscription. The more content people watch, the longer they stay subscribed. The longer they stay, the more profitable they become. These are opposite models. According to Netflix's shareholder reports, their recommendation algorithm drove approximately 80% of content consumption by the mid-2000s. 80% of what people watched came from algorithmic recommendations. Blockbuster? People walked in, saw what was on the shelf, and rented based on cover art. But here's where it gets strategic. Netflix used data to understand consumption patterns so deeply that they only stocked what customers actually wanted. Lower inventory costs. Lower storage costs. More efficient operations. Blockbuster stocked thousands of titles across thousands of stores. Many sat unused. Capital tied up in inventory that generated zero return. The data advantage compounded. As Netflix grew, they accumulated more customer data. More data meant better predictions. Better predictions meant better recommendations. Better recommendations meant higher engagement. Higher engagement meant more renewals. More renewals meant more data. It was a cycle Blockbuster couldn't break because their entire infrastructure was built on physical retail. You can't retrofit 9,000 stores into a data machine overnight. By 2005, Netflix had 4 million subscribers. Blockbuster was still the giant. But the trajectory was already set. Netflix's subscription model also changed psychology. Flat fee meant unlimited rentals. You watched more. Netflix learned more. Better recommendations followed. Blockbuster customers thought differently. Do I want to pay $5 to rent this? Fewer rentals. Less data. Less learning. Then came 2007. Netflix launched streaming. Not because they invented the technology, but because their data showed streaming was the future. Blockbuster had the resources to compete. They launched Blockbuster on demand in 2006. But it was too late. Netflix already had millions of data points showing exactly what customers wanted. Here's the critical insight. The real competitive advantage wasn't content or technology. It was the predictive engine built on customer data. Blockbuster thought they could compete on convenience and location. Netflix proved that data and prediction were more valuable than physical presence. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. Netflix had over 20 million subscribers. The company with 9,000 stores and billions in revenue was destroyed by a company that understood one thing better: how to use data to predict and serve customer behavior. Today, Netflix is worth over $250 billion with 200 million subscribers globally. Their competitive moat is still their data and recommendation algorithm. Competitors have bigger libraries and deeper pockets. But Netflix still dominates because their algorithm understands viewers better. So what's the lesson? First, don't compete on the same dimension as your competitor. Netflix wasn't competing on rentals. They were competing on data and prediction. That's a different game. Second, adaptability wins over size. Blockbuster had scale, brand capital. But they couldn't adapt. Netflix was smaller and flexible. They could pivot to streaming. They could rebuild around data. Third, understand your real business. Blockbuster thought they were in video rentals. Netflix understood they were in customer behavior prediction. Once you know what business you're in, everything follows. The pattern applies everywhere. Amazon dominates retail through data. Apple dominates phones through understanding user behavior. Spotify dominates music through algorithmic understanding. In modern business, your competitive advantage increasingly comes from understanding customers better than anyone else. That understanding comes from data. Netflix made one decision Blockbuster couldn't: build the entire business around data-driven prediction instead of traditional retail logic. Blockbuster had every advantage except one. And that one advantage, understanding how to leverage customer data, turned out to be the only one that mattered.